Hello, happy people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at the Arthur Machen short story called The Great Return. It was published and serialized in 1915, and it was then later republished in a booklet form. It's a part of my White People and Other Weird Stories collection that was published by Penguin Books in 2011 that we've been doing a deep dive into. It's the third short story in a row that we've written in 1914 and 1915 when he was a war correspondent for the World War. He was also writing a lot of fiction that was pro-British, that was propaganda-ish. Also, these last three short stories, The Bowmen, The Soldier's Rest, and The Great Return, they still have this sort of a key spiritualist feel. There is a truth of the matter to it that is magical in nature or divine in nature or so forth. But unlike his horror short stories, these instead have a positive sort of an ending to them or interpretation of events that are happening. The Bowmen was the start of the Angels of Mons. It's sort of a retelling of the Battle of Mons between Britain and Germany, in which it enters divine interpretation at the end of it. It was heavily read. It was believed by a lot of people, and actually created the Angels of Mons, a legend that you can actually look up on Wikipedia if you want to do a deeper dive into it. Arthur Machen created that with this short story. The next month he published The Soldier's Rest, another 3.5-page short story, which asks the key questions of where do soldiers go when they die, especially good soldiers, and that sort of a thing. And then this one's this is the next year, 1915. It was serialized in the London Evening News from October through November. So it's about a year later, after because the Soldier's Rest was published in October. So this is about a year later that this is serialized, and then it's going to be republished in booklet form. This one's a longer short story. It took me a couple of days for me to knock it out. Probably took me about an hour and a half for me to knock it out. It's about 38 pages in my short story collection. It is interesting because it's divided into sections, and each section is about 4 or 5 pages long. And then at the end of each section, there's going to be a revelation about this village or the worship of something in this village. And at the end of this, for example, you'll find out in the first few pages that there is in this Protestant church in this village, that there is the scent of incense, like a Roman Mass is being held there, a Roman Catholic Mass is being held there, rather than Protestants. Then you'll find out that there is, at the end of the next section, that there is light that's happening there at night rather than night. Then at the end of the next section, about 12 pages into the short story, you find out that there are a bunch of strangers that have suddenly shown up in the village, and you'll find out more and more about what's actually happening in each of these sections for about 4 or 5 pages each section, and except for the last two sections. And then the second to last section, you're gonna find out what's actually been happening, and then in the last section there'll actually be a religious service that you'll actually oversee. And that's sort of the end of the structure of this short story. Now I try to keep my short stories spoiler free except for the first 1/4 or 1/3 of it. So you're about 12 pages in with the 3 spoilers to give you an idea of what sort of the style of the short story is, and how he's telling this short story. Now this is not his traditional horror. Neither had the last 2 short stories. They're military. This one's just really just more drama. It's not horror. It's not, it's just really just more of a drama short story than it is anything else. So that's kind of a genre shift that he has undergone. And again, it's a very interesting shift because he was previously anti-Victorian, particularly anti-materialist Victorians. In his previous short stories that were in the horror genre, or even the one that's the murder mystery that I've reviewed for you already, sort of in this short story collection. And so, again, it's pretty interesting that there is this, and he's very anti-materialist particularly, and has some anti-Victorialist, you guys are way too haughty for your own good sort of a thing. He is a spiritualist. He's a dyed-in-the-wool spiritualist. So every single short story that he has written or novella that I've ever read by him has had this sort of a spiritualist interpretation of what's happening. For example, in his horror short stories, you'll regularly have two main characters, one of which is a spiritualist who believes that there are things that happen that are not detectable by our five senses. Maybe it's a sixth sense, maybe it's ESP and telepathy, maybe it's ghosts and undead living on after death, maybe it's divine and satanic interventions. However you interpret it. Maybe it's mythologies actually existing, like fairies. However you interpret it, based on your own individual belief, that's how Machen is. He's a spiritualist, and so you typically in his horror stories there are two main characters, one of which is a spiritualist, one of which is a materialist, and at the end of the story, the materialist will come to believe the actual truth of the dark matter. But in these last three stories, it's been a positive matter, not a dark matter. But again, that there are things that are beyond our senses, that we cannot measure, that exist beyond us, and whether or not it's that we have a soul, or whether or not there's a God and a Satan at war, whatever your interpretation is of that, that's sort of Arthur Machen's dyed-in-the-wool belief. And even though he's shifted genres, that core argument of Machen has not left. It's still there. So, just as kind of an FYI of Machen going into it, I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. The last two I gave 6 out of 10s to, because I think the genre shift into war and quick little 3.5 page stuff just doesn't suit his style as a writer. I gave his previous stuff L8s. As he's generally very nice, very evocative, he's nice writing, and that sort of thing. So I'm giving this between the two at a 7. I was less engaged with this than I am with his horror stuff. There's more descriptions and less plot. You're just basically in a Welsh town trying to figure out what's happening. But it feels like each chapter has more descriptions and conversations and less plot that's actually happening, which I think is to the story's detriment. And I wasn't as engaged, particularly for the first 5 or 6 pages. It just took me a while to get engaged with the story. But your mileage may vary. You may love this short story and give it a 9 out of 10, or you may just agree with me and think it's more of a 7 out of 10, or you may think it's more of a 5 out of 10. Have you read The Great Return? If so, I'll be more than happy to talk with you about it further in the below, particularly about spoilers and whatever your take is. If you like this video, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.